people who are the decision makers in this space. And so, for our film to be a small part in this now like growing movement to turn the tide on deepfake abuse is a real honor as a documentary filmmaker. Um, when we went into Another Body, we felt like the missing piece in the coverage of the deepfake story was a really close, intimate, detailed, extensive first-person account of what it was like to go through this form of abuse, to one day find that someone had uploaded uh, sexualized video content of you with your face inserted into it without your consent. And the reason why so many people weren't doing this is, as has been sort of articulated time and time again throughout the talks today, is that it's very scary to do so. It's very scary to use your voice because of the fear of retaliation that can come from this, from the shame and silencing, and just from the responsibility that you have to take on as a person who's sort of doing this. And that's, I think, is where our decision to sort of use the technology to protect the Taylor and Julia came from. I've been talking for a while, so I'll pass over to Sophie.
Yeah, I just wanted to, yeah, I think that it's really interesting. Like, this film has taught us so much about the power and potential of documentary as a medium to affect social change. And, we've learned so much along that journey. And, what having a documentary does is that's an 90 minutes of someone's time when they can engage really deeply with an issue, and then issue can be brought to their awareness, not just in terms of the statistics and the top line and the context, the broader brushstrokes, but in the real intimacy and in an emotional way. And I think that it's been really beautiful and interesting and powerful to see how lawmakers, for example, politicians, other people that are really embedded in the policy conversations have responded to the film and how it's been used, because the film in itself is a case study, essentially, that takes you through many parts of that survivor journey. And in a way, but that's all stuff that we'd hoped for and that we'd expected, I think, when we started making this film. And that was our intention making the film. I think that the pieces that we've been surprised by and which we, I think have expanded definitely my understanding of what documentary impact can be and how a documentary impact campaign can work, has been the way that, because we have been working in this field, building this impact campaign for a number of years, and actually untraditionally, normally a documentary impact campaign happens when the film is done, and that's the moment when you're kind of engaging with audiences and trying to start a conversation with the film. But because of the nature of this area and because of our previous work and our backgrounds, I did lots of activism before making this film. We actually started that campaign and that work like years, throughout the making of the film. And that ended up being this really powerful way of gathering the field. And I think what we've seen is the potential for a documentary team to be one part of the connective tissue in a field, and like bringing together so many of the incredible people on the call today, who of course are, many of them are know each other and have worked together and are colleagues in different ways, but the film can become like this focus for all of that work, because we're not charities, we're very mobile, but we're coming into an issue with a lot of care and depth, and we're deep in the investigative work, and we get to know the issue extremely well. But we also have a slightly outside perspective where we want to maximize the time that we have on this subject area, because we're not necessarily going to be working on this issue for the rest of our careers, and we don't have the kind of frameworks that a charity might need to kind of go through in terms of its priorities and providing services in a long-term way. So actually, like, that's the power of a documentary film team, is that we can be very mobile. We can mobilize our resources in a very like effective and kind of on the and very like responsive way, and help like think about what the field needs from a like kind of both insider and outsider perspective.
Yeah, and for those who just joined, I'll just note, please chuck any questions in the chat where we can respond to them as and when we receive them. And I think it's, we talk a lot in our sort of Q&As about how fulfilling it is to sort of watch Taylor's journey over the course of the production of this film. We were very, very close to her through it and formed a very strong relationship with her, and sort of seeing her strength and courage to pursue her own case and achieve a sort of stellar master's degree and take strides in the sort of the career that she wanted. It was incredibly rewarding. But what we don't really talk about is the sort of parallel journey that we've been on with the sort of space of deepfake abuse activism. Because when we started this journey, there weren't many people working in this space because it was very new technology, and the people that were working in it were very atomized, scattered across the world. And so sort of coming to this moment where we have this summit where we have all of these brilliant people who are really taking it on to do something about this and sort of coming together and sharing ideas is a really beautiful thing to see, because we have seen this space grow. We've seen this movement grow. And, at the beginning, I'm not going to lie, like Sophie and I felt very pessimistic. And we don't anymore. And that's fantastic. And that's thanks to all of our collaborators working to change this sort of the deepfake situation.
Yeah. I also think that what we've seen, as Reuben mentioned, we have talked about the power that Taylor found through the act of sharing her story. And I think that this field is such a powerful case study in how much bigger the ripple effect is than you could ever imagine when somebody goes through that process, that very difficult process of speaking about this. Lots of people in Q&As have asked me or asked us what have been some of the most challenging things about making the film. And I always say that for me, the most challenging thing about making the film was holding alongside Taylor the moments when she doubted whether she could keep going. And I think that we were able, just through being there and through having the amazing support of the field, of people like Adam, of people, like Carrie Goldberg law firm, and all of these like people that we could put Taylor in touch with or make her aware that they were there and be that connective tissue to support. Because of that, the presence of all of that, I think that gave Taylor so much, that gave her the capacity to keep going, where I think that if none of that had been there, I don't know if she would have got to the answers that she got to. I don't know if she would have uncovered all of the other women. I don't know if she would have then got any closure. And the sad reality is that so many people in Taylor's shoes don't have that support, don't have people checking in on her saying, hey, how's the investigation going? Is there anything we can do to help? And just that simple fact, I think, has been really, really transformative.
So we have a question in the chat. The question is, what has been the journey of your subjects accidentally becoming activists? Do you think this is the power of docs? I think, with social impact documentary, it is like an aspect of it. And in reality, I think some subjects aren't aware of the responsibility they're taking on when they become the subject of a film like this. Taylor, however, when she was a kid, she wanted to be the president of the United States. So one of her first instincts, because she's a kind and caring person who wants to do good in the world, when this happened to her, was to think like, how can I make the conditions better for the next person this happens to? And so when we spoke with her and offered her the opportunity to be in this documentary, albeit anonymous, it wasn't a hard sell. Like, she came back to us like the next day and was a willing participant because she saw this opportunity to help other survivors of deepfake abuse as the only sort of silver lining of her situation. And so I think she always wanted to sort of be an activist. I mean, I think, GB maybe did it more out of necessity, knowing that, would you say that, Soph, knowing that no one was feeling able to sort of step up and speak out against it in the sort of in the ASMR content creator space. And so when Taylor got in contact with her and presented this information to her, I think that was the little push that GB needed to take a stand and speak out against it for the benefit of her whole community. And I wonder if she would have done that without the film. I don't know.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that I've been thinking a lot today about like what is an activist? This concept. Oh my God.
The activism, yeah,
Is an
celebrate
activist
activism.
symbol of the day. Zoom, Zoom is, Zoom is on board. But no, I have been thinking about this question of what is an activist because I think that what was really beautiful in so there was a moment when the White House released their executive order on AI, and GB and Taylor were both invited along with us to go and be there in recognition of their contribution to this field and what they'd given by, you know, sharing their stories. And I think that they were both kind of really blown away by the fact that they'd been extended an invitation from the president of the US in recognition of their like central pivotal role in moving this field forward. And for us on the team of My Image, My Choice, we were like, of course, like how could they do that without you? You know what I mean? Like they have been two of the most influential survivors talking about this issue in the US. But I think it was a really almost trippy moment for Taylor in particular to understand the scale of what she'd personally contributed, and I think that with GB as well, I think that she didn't necessarily think of herself as an activist, and she wasn't engaged not because she didn't care, not because she didn't want the best for her community, but just she didn't necessarily see the pathways. She didn't believe that anything could change, so why would you put yourself out there? You know, like she said on the talk with you today, Reuben, she was really nervous to share that video, and she was really worried about the pushback and the response, the negative response. But what overwhelmingly came her way was a huge amount of support, and that brought in itself confidence, and that she's really stepped into that kind of leadership position. But it's really made me think about like what can we do as a society to encourage more people to step into those leadership roles, and how do we support people to do that? Because if GB hadn't have made that decision, you know, I just think that the so much less momentum would have been created, and that was a really important like fledgling moment, and it was an important moment for all of us in the team as well, because we'd been working towards this idea of GB releasing a video, and of course the fact that she has a big platform enabled that to kind of make a splash in a way that other people's activism might not have kind of such a catalytic effect in terms of the community. But yeah, it's been really, really striking to see what can be done by individuals and how far that can go.
We have one question from Biana, but I just one more thing I just wanted to say on this. You know, I think it was so great to hear GB say that her experience of speaking out was so positive because of the outpouring of love that she received for doing so. And you know, I do think we have to be candid and say that isn't the experience of everyone. A lot of people, the sort of the harassment they face does outweigh the love and applause they get for being brave enough to speak out, because there are a lot of people who are willing to harass women who are speaking out online. But it's really important to understand that, you know, for her this has been such a rewarding experience, and she's been so moved by the people that did come out and sort of express love that would have otherwise stayed silent, to try and sort of build her up and celebrate her for using her voice. And so hearing that side of things, I think, was really moving, and I hope inspires other people to stand up and use their platform and speak out against this form of abuse.
I just want to weigh in on that one. It's a really complex thing, this question of talking about speaking out. And I think Noelle has spoken about how the horrendous harassment and pushback she got as a consequence of speaking out was, you know, in some ways as traumatizing as the original abuse, is something that she said to us. So I think that there is a real balance to strike. I think, but what I've seen personally is I have seen in every case the healing power and the agency that that person reclaims by speaking out is absolutely enormous and not to be discounted. So even if there is continued harassment, even if there is increased harassment, there is something internal that is extremely potent. That's not to say it's right for everyone, and I wouldn't want to encourage, personal circumstances have to be taken into consideration. And I'm sure that there are some cases where there is a very real threat that cannot be, that really needs to, that will outweigh the benefits. But I do truly believe that there is something like internal that can't be touched in that decision, that that will always like have a deeply healing effect, given especially that this abuse in particular is an abuse that aims to shame, and this is all about shame, and speaking out is the ultimate rejection of shame. But yeah, thank you for these questions. I can see they're coming through. One thing, so should I read it out then? Yeah, I'll read it out and then everyone can know what it is. So Brianna says, thank you for helping us go through this abuse to feel less alone by sharing these stories. Thank you. It feels so supportive. Unlike Mammy, I want my story told. The person who did this to me is a prominent in the public eye and in a position of power amongst a vulnerable population. Can you shed light on, one, how not to get sued in the process of speaking up publicly, and two, how to connect with writers or filmmakers who want to share more stories such as these in order to help others? First off, that's such a powerful question. Thank you for being part of this discussion. Thank you for contributing, and thank you for considering sharing your story. And I completely understand in this discussion that imbalance of power is a really significant factor. One practical point, Carrie Goldberg Law, tomorrow Norma and Carrie are both going to be speaking. They have written a really good piece around anti-slap laws. So I'm not a legal expert. Go to their website for more information, but basically that's around defamation, because the reality is that if you're telling the truth, you shouldn't be sued. Like you should be able to frame the story in a way that you'll be protected from that, because you have the right to tell your story. And there are laws which prevent kind of bad faith defamation suits called, I don't know if that's slap laws or anti-slap laws, I can't remember the exact terminology, but definitely take a look at that, and work with someone like them who can like help you guide you through the way to do that and way to protect yourself in doing that. Yeah, Reuben, I don't know if you wanted to jump in on the other point.
I totally agree. I think seek legal advice. I don't think we're in a place to. I mean, in the particular case with our film, it was easy for Mike is not his real name, and so none of our subjects were ever sort of at a serious sort of threat of being sued for talking about this. And so I would really advise you to seek out that website. That's just been put in the chat. That's a Carrie Goldberg law firm. They're an amazing law firm, and they'll help. They could also sort of assist with your case. The second part of it, in terms of sort of connecting with other writers or filmmakers, is we are constantly getting requests for survivors who are wanting to speak out. So if you get in contact with us at My Image My Choice, Sarah, could you chuck the email address in the chat? We can connect you with a journalist or potentially filmmakers who reach out to us who are looking for stories, because we get these requests very, very regularly. We probably want to have a quick chat with you first, just to sort of get the rundown of your story and see what your comfort areas are. But once we sort of figured that out, we can help connect you with someone who will hopefully give you a platform.
And one of that is that we have a collaboration with Ivana de Maria's incredible platform, Story Circle, which is a space for survivors of image-based sexual violence to share their stories and build community and read other people's experiences. And yeah, Story Place is where to go. And yeah, I think, Sarah, would you mind putting the My Image, My Choice section of that into the chat as well?
Quick shout out to Sarah Gadami, who's been running some of the tech all day, her and Marina Hunt, who've been really making this run smoothly. So thank you, you two. Did it feel strange or icky at all for the team to use deepfake technology in the production of the documentary? Or do you see the technology itself as amoral, which is from Bianca Gay. She also said she thought it was a genius choice, but I felt a bit apprehensive about saying out loud that someone had said we'd done something that was genius. But okay, so do I think I never felt strange or icky, and I believe Sophie felt the sort of the same way. I know Sam Cole actually sort of did slightly contest with this position, but it is our belief that the technology itself is not inherently evil. I mean, no one contested when its predecessors that were being used in sort of the VFX in Hollywood were around like before it had this sort of popular misapplication or popular application for abuse. No one ever sort of thought anything of it. So there's not something inherently evil with the technology. It's just that without regulation, and with this sort of its pervasion in communities which are sort of known for ardent misogyny and violence against women, particularly digital violence against women, this technology is causing a lot of harm. And that's why we do this work with My Image, My Choice, because we want to reduce the amount of harm the technology is causing. But that being said, we're documentary filmmakers, and we know there have been so many stories which could have been told, which could have done so much good for the world if there was a way to anonymize subjects while retaining a strong emotional connection to them. And before deepfake technology, it wasn't really possible. You know, people would put the subjects behind a silhouette, or they would have actors to read out their testimony. And I, I just don't think that's as effective a route. And so this is huge power, I think, in the medium of documentary and video journalism to embolden people to speak out and use their voice and make sure their story has an impact on the world to sort of change it for the better, in a way that's sort of persuasive and uh, engenders a huge amount of empathy. And so we're not against deepfake technology. We're just against the way it's currently causing havoc in our society. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to explain a little bit why it's has that intimacy is that, this technology really and truly does capture the emotions of the person kind of underneath the veil. So that's one of the reasons why it can feel so violating for people that have been targeted, because it's not just their image inserted into pornography, but it's their face seeming to enjoy the positions or be afraid, or the emotions of the porn video will come through on the target face. And so that's why it really is a violation of identity in a way, because it looks like they're experiencing those emotions. But the flip side of that is that in terms of documentary storytelling, Taylor's emotions come through the face veil. We really strategically hired actors who are also activists to be the face veil, because we wanted to recognize that they were kind of donating their face in a really generous way to be this protector. That was a really kind of insane part of our filmmaking process. But yeah, and there are all these other incredible applications. I mean, one that really speaks to me in terms of deepfake voice technology is the idea of people who've been in like a really terrible accident, for example, and they've lost the ability to speak in their own voice. And then they can, speak through a robotic voice that sounds like them. And there are all of these kinds of things. Like, I do believe that technology itself can be used or misused. And this is a cultural problem, much more so than a technological problem. So, another question. How long did it take you to create this film? How did you support yourselves as you worked on such an uncomfortable topic? Thank you for this thought. It took us it's like 4 years now. Yeah. Basically like a year of research, a year of following the story, making the film, a year of editing, and a year of bringing the film into the world.
It was like 5 years then, right? 2019. And we're 4.5 years.
Yeah. Yeah, a bit of development before that, but yeah, 4.5 years. And so these are long-term projects. And I think that, I'm very grateful that me and Reuben did it together. I'm very grateful that we were friends before making the film, and being able to like do it with someone who I've like felt like a proper, like in the trenches ally, that we could get angry with each other, we could support each other, we could be as we're both extremely perfectionistic, and we could be like as pernickety and and fight creative, questions to the death if needs be, in a way that like the bond of trust was really solid. That was really important. Um, and and yeah, but I also think that like we've been so lucky with the people that we've worked with, because we've just been endlessly inspired by Taylor, I think, and by GB. And so it's felt, even though like the subject is really difficult, the journey of making the film, most of that work has been from a watching Taylor grow in a beautiful way, watching the field grow in a beautiful way. So it hasn't felt heavy for a really long time. I mean, it's difficult at the beginning because you just don't know where things are going to go, and that's very precarious and that's very scary. And until you have money, it's just all you're praying, and you just have no idea. But at the same time, when the thing really starts to take shape, luckily for us, actually quite a lot of the more traumatic or challenging, emotionally challenging aspects had kind of were already like in a moving into a more positive state of mind or something.
Yeah, and the sad truth is there's just not enough money in documentary for us to have a very well-funded self-care support structure around in the film. And I think that there's, for so many years, documentarians have been asked to wear so many hats. I mean, not just are they sort of directing and like researching, but also producing and often editing. We didn't edit the film, but we were very intimately involved in the edit of this film. But you also suddenly bear a huge amount of responsibility to your subjects as well, your contributors. And so there is a lot of responsibility, both sort of practical and creative, but also emotional in the process of making a documentary. And there's no formal training for that emotional side of it. There's no sort of blueprint in place. And it takes a lot and it takes its toll. But again, I think Sophie's so right in saying this is a project that I also feel so relieved to have done with a co-director, to have someone that would listen to me for as long as I wanted, and I'd listen to her for as long as I wanted, as long as I needed to speak, or as long as she needed to speak, because then we kind of become our own sort of therapist within the project. But there is finally, I think, a movement in documentary which is criticizing the fact that there isn't ever budget lines for the sort of the self-care that is required for documentarians. And I think that, it's a great time for it to happen because it's very needed. Who knows if that money is going to appear out of nowhere for that to actually happen. But at least documentarians are now calling for for more sort of emotional support for the filmmakers that are involved in very emotionally taxing stories.
I think we've reached time, so we will be signing off in a second. But yeah, I just wanted to say again, thank you so much to everyone that's listening, everyone that's watched the film. Please, help us spread the word about the film, about the summit. The film is going to be available on Eventive with this Q&A recorded for the next couple of days, I think, just through this during the time that the summit is running, and a couple of days after. So please do let people know that that they can stream in this way. And yeah, I hope that we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
For the day of amazing, and tomorrow, which is what I'm really excited about, a lot of the conversation will revolve around solutions, and we've got some really smart, brilliant people that are going to be unpacking what can policy do, what can tech do, how can we share our stories, and all of these kinds of very important parts of the conversation.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'll say, I believe the film was available until Sunday night on Eventive. I believe that's the case. Sarah, do you know if that's right? I don't know. So let's just say it is available until Sunday night, and we'll correct you tomorrow morning if it's not. Thanks so much for attending the summit today, and we really look forward to the events tomorrow.